My name is Karen Danner, and I want to walk you through one of the modules I've created for one of my Survey of Anthropology courses that I teach for Pierce College and for Grays Harbor College. What you're seeing in front of you now is the student view of the Survey of Anthropology course, and I'm currently on the home or landing page, and I'll just quickly scroll through that so that you can get a sense of what the home page looks like. I'm very cognizant of making sure that text is, especially the important parts of the text, are very visible and kind of pop out at you, and your eye travels over, as your eye travels over the document, you kind of catch the highlighted portions. So I'm going to scroll up and click on modules, and this is the module that I'm sending to you for you to look at. In the module, I only have 5 items. This is actually part of a larger module that I teach on the classification of modern humans. It's a week 4. It's actually after several pieces of information have already been given to the students. So it's kind of thrust in the middle of class. So basically, the first thing that I start out with is a checklist for the week. And if I click on that, you'll see as it loads. What I have here is an embedded list that I create in Google Docs, and then I embed the list here so that they can see it from on their computers. But basically I start with kind of the outcomes that are expected for the students within the module, and a kind of checklist, which I organize in this way that's kind of idiosyncratic to me, and that's this read, watch, do. So it's explore the literature, watch and experience some of the features of the concepts that we're covering in class, and what they need to perform in order to accomplish their graded tasks. So I'm going to scroll back up to modules and take you into the main module list. I've created a couple of content pages and a couple of activities for them to do, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the first content page, Basic Principles in Classification. And in here I've loaded a just kind of a fun video that students kind of get a kick out of. It's the anthropology wrap from the television show Community. It's only a few minutes. It doesn't take very long, and it's kind of fun to watch that. It's sort of a precursor to our discussion on biological classification. And in the video, it's kind of fun because they run through the classification of humans. So it kind of is a great way to kind of kick off the lesson. I provide some basic information on the classification system, but usually what I start with is I am often using the outcomes as a touchstone in every lesson, and you'll see that as we kind of progress through the lessons and through the activities that they're expected to do. And there are a series of links, and I've already indicated to students that the links are important information, and that often they will be graded on material that is accessed within those links. So they're usually accustomed to accessing those links for important information. I've embedded a video, which you can watch at your own pace. I've embedded a video that I created that explains the Linnaean classification system kind of in basic form. And I've also embedded a couple of examples of how it works using the grizzly bear as an example of filtering. In the video, I demonstrate the filtering process when it comes to the classification of humans, but I provide another example here. And then I provide text to explain the embedded table that I've included here that kind of also further defines the filtering capabilities or the filtering process that happens within the classification system. And then, of course, I have a link to an outside tutorial that they can access in order to get more information. So I'm going to scroll back to the top of the page and go back into the modules area so that you can see the second content page that I've created. It's the order primate, And when I click on that, it's actually just a simple page that identifies the significant features of primates, and then there's an outside reading assignment for them. So it's actually a very simple page for them. So if I scroll back up to the top again and click on modules, that will bring me into one of the activities. If I click on that activity, this is an activity that I've designed in which students are asked to watch a video and then to identify physical, biological, and then social similarities and differences between chimpanzees and modern humans. And I usually work my assignments in 4 parts, and I will talk about those 4 parts in just a second here. So the 4 parts that I establish for all of my assignments is that I always work up my assignments in 4 parts, with the first part being the purpose of the assignment, so the purpose statement, and the purpose statement usually directly references the outcomes, either the course outcomes and or the module unit outcomes for the class, so that students are aware that there's intent and purpose behind the assignment, that it's not busy work that they're being assigned. The second part of the assignment or activity is always a sort of background that students need in order to accomplish the task. So in this case, they need to have read their Chapter 5, they need to watch the film below, and they need to carefully observe and take notes on the traits that they observe within the film. And then the third part of assignments, and like I said, I always do it in these 4 parts. The third part is the specific instructions that students are given for the assignment. So in this case, what I've done for the students is I've embedded a table that I've created in Google Docs, and it's an expanding table, so students can add their entries or add their observations to the table, and the table will expand as they add their observations. And then I've embedded the table below, so once they refresh their screen, they should see their entries appear on the screen, and as well as their fellow students. So it becomes a kind of collaborative design of a large table that denotes those similarities and differences between chimpanzees and humans. I always include very specific instructions in terms of what's expected of them for the assignment. Part of the reason that there's so much specificity is because I find in an online environment that you often have a technological component associated with the assignments, and students may often get lost in how to navigate those technological components. So I'm often very specific on how to access the materials that they need for the course. And you'll see that there's also requirements in terms of they need to provide specific examples from the film. They have to timestamp their example, and they have to put their name, associate their name with the entry, so that we know who's who and who contributed. And then they are also expected to do a 1 to 2 paragraph personal response, which I'll talk about at the end of the module. So if you scroll further down, actually, I think I'm going to go take you back up and show you what the table looks like that the students will access. So if I click on the similarities and differences table that students will access, it takes me into a Google Doc sheet. And again, like I said, it's an expanding table that students can add their entries to, and they have access to. And I'm going to go back up to the top and click back into Canvas, and you can see that the table is embedded here. The fourth part of assignments that I've always used is the grading standards for the assignment, and in this case I've embedded a kind of rubric that gives them a sense of what the expectations are, what the point values are, and how to earn a grade for this assignment. And then at the bottom I tell them, don't forget, you need to post a personal response. So once they've added their entries into the table, they're not done. They need to come back here and add a personal response, and they have requirements for the personal response. One of the things that the reason that I chose this as an assignment type, so when I initially put this assignment together, I debated on what kind of Canvas template I would use, whether I would use an assignment or a discussion or a quiz, or, which template I would use. And I decided to go with discussion rather than assignment. And part of that is because I like to recreate some of the experience of a grounded classroom in an online environment. And so a video like this where you're watching chimpanzee behavior, it's intrinsically interesting, and students find it fascinating and like to discuss their observations and their kind of experience watching the film. And plus, you get to build a sense of community by doing a discussion forum, and I really encourage that sort of community development by allowing students to talk amongst themselves about what they experienced and what they saw. So I'm going to scroll back up. You can see I always do my assignments in that kind of 4-part process. The purpose, the background that you need to complete the assignment, the assignment instructions, and then the grading standards for the assignment. And you'll see that in the next assignment. So I'm going to scroll back up and click on modules. And I'm going to go to the self-study assignment that I have for students. It's a very simple assignment. And again, you'll see the 4 parts here. The question for the students is, do chimps have culture? In a previous chapter, and you can see that under the background information, it asks them to review chapter 4. And that's the chapter 4 was a chapter on culture. To review that chapter, to read chapter 5, which is our current chapter that we're working on in this unit, to watch the film Chimps of Gombe, which was the previous assignment, and then download and read the articles. And so in this way, I'm using all of the materials that they've encountered and kind of aggregating those materials. The purpose statement is here, as you saw in the previous assignment. I do that 4-part process. So the purpose, the background, the assignment instructions, and the grading criteria. And you can see that the purpose statement is this assignment's designed to help you compare and contrast human social behavior with the social behavior of other primates. That is the kind of reference to the outcomes for the course. And then of course, the background, and I just covered that, and the assignment instructions. Like I said, usually assignment instructions are more specific and very a kind of itemized list and very specific as to what's expected of them. And I've found over the years that the more specific I am, the better quality assignments I have students get. So for grading criteria, in this one, this is a discussion forum, and I wanted to grade their posts holistically. So the grading criteria looks slightly different from the rubric that you saw in the previous assignment, and that's because I'm looking at their assignments in a holistic manner. And students are sort of introduced to these different ways of grading and these different concepts early in the quarter, so they understand the process. And very much about being specific about the process. So I'm going to go ahead and go back up to modules. So that kind of explains the basic modules that that I'm sending to you. If you have any questions, please let me know.